live again. All right. How would you describe yourself politically?
Politically,
Politically.
I would say I'm an independent. I'm a registered Republican who generally votes for Democrats. Uh, I'm not a conservative. Go, buddy. It's time to go inside. No. Oh, let me get Buddy in the. Hey, Marge, call Buddy, would you? All right, he's off. I'm not a conservative. I guess I have a liberal bent in the sense of uh, education and health and poor people should be our primary objectives, or at least of the government. I mean, they should do other things. They should build roads, but education is such a vital issue, especially today. And I think people who have bad health, or people who are desperately poor, for whatever reasons, need to be supported so that they can at least live a human existence. And I think our government does a fair job at that, but there's lots of room for improvement.
What U.S. president have you admired the most, and why?
Well, I like Jimmy Carter, although I guess I don't know how he may not have been terribly effective. I thought Nixon was very effective. I didn't like him in a lot of ways, but I thought he was an efficient guy who knew what he had to do and did it pretty well. Kennedy I liked, but he wasn't. I wasn't as enraptured of him as the general population. Had a lot of charisma, and I thought Johnson. What was his name? Lyndon Johnson actually did a very good job picking up from Kennedy and getting what Kennedy wanted to do accomplished. So I think all those guys were. I thought Bill Clinton was one of the most potent guys. Well, that's not a good word. uh, he was a smart guy who knew what he wanted to do and generally was able to get it done pretty much. And so I thought he was one of the most effective presidents I've seen, no matter how you liked him or didn't like him. And I thought FDR was a great president, although he was really beyond my political understanding. But when I see what those guys did, and I really like Abraham Lincoln, but I didn't know him personally.
um, did you have any bad habits now or in the past?
Bad habits. I eat too much. Um, Sometimes Marge says I drive too fast. Uh, Maybe I think if I was maybe I was too frugal. I don't know. There were times money has always been important to me, and I don't know why. And I manage it carefully, and that's a wonderful asset. But sometimes I probably should have spent more money on things that I said, well, I don't absolutely have to have it. That might be a weakness, but it's probably not too bad a one.
Have you ever been in a serious accident?
No, I was as a kid. When I was 4 years old, I hated the dentist, and the dentist gave me gas, and I don't know that that was the cause. But when I got home, my parents had bought me a truck, and I pulled it across the street. We had lived on a dead-end street. This was 1934. And a neighbor drove up the street very slowly in a 1928 Chevrolet or something, and he was talking to his daughter who was on the sidewalk, and I decided to walk out across the street, and he hit me. He probably was only going 15 miles an hour or less, but he broke my leg. So I was taken to the hospital, and I was in the hospital 6 weeks, which was not too uncommon in those days for a broken leg. And that's the only serious accident I've ever had.
Tell us about any scars that you may have.
Scars.
Physical scars.
Well, I have one on my hand, but I forgot where I got it. And I've got a few others here and there, but I don't even recall why they occurred. So I never had anything bad except some gashes here and there.
Right. Has anyone ever saved your life?
Well, not that I'm aware of, but they probably have.
Have you ever saved anyone else's life?
Well, I think I know a story, which I've told you before. um, Go away. When I was 15, I had taken a summer camp. I went to a camp in Maine at Ocean Park, and I had taken junior life saving. And we were up there either that summer or following summer, and I was probably 15, and a bunch of young people. We were out on the beach every day just hanging out. And I heard these cries for help. And there were two people out there. They were riptides occasionally that would kind of drag you out. And if you're not a great swimmer, you could easily get beyond your standing depth. So I heard these cries, and I ran down, and I leaped in the water, and I swam out, and I grabbed the woman, and I was able to do the I forgot what they call it, but fireman's carry or something, but in life saving, and I pulled her back. You have to get the person floating on their back more or less and drag them by swimming. And then I went back after the guy, and by that time I was really very tired, and he was delirious. Don't ask me. He said, let me drown, my wife is dead, and and he was going down and coming up and trying to get some air. And when I grabbed hold of him, I just couldn't maneuver him because he was a decent-sized guy, and I was tired, and we were in water over our head. And I didn't know how I was going to move him because you literally have to float him up on top, and he wasn't at all cooperative, and I was really exhausted. So I did discover that while it was over my head, it was probably only 7 feet or so, and I was able to go down underwater, grab his hand, go down underwater, and then jump off diagonally, push off the sand bottom diagonally towards shore, which gave me enough emphasis or oomph to pull him in 2 or 3 feet. And then I go down again and pulled him in 2 or 3 feet, and pretty soon I was in 6 feet of water, and then I was in 5 feet of water, and I could put my head above and breathe, and I did get him in, and they were very appreciative and wrote me a very nice letter, and which I have somewhere in my archives. And my name was in the New York Times, where my grandmother, who thought I was the greatest person on earth since Jesus Christ came anyway, she just loved me. She had 2 sons. One died, and I was the joy of her life. And she gave the interview to the New York Times. So it told how I tinkered with radios, and I rode my bike, and
You still have that article?
yeah, I have the article.
Oh, I'd love to read it.
Yeah, and I went to Sunday school at the First Baptist Church. She got that in. She had to get that in. And I also got a bronze medal from some group that features those things. I think maybe that's why the New York Times ran the article. So that's my big hero story.
All right. If you could change something about yourself, what would it be?
Well, I don't know. I've grown satisfied, I guess, with who I am. I changed all the changeable things. I guess I would, if there was one thing I wish I had more of, it's something Marge has, and it doesn't rub off, and that would be a way with people and remembering names and the persons and the events of their lives and all the stories. I'm not good at that, and in fact, we were in Kennedy Airport going somewhere, and a guy in front of me turned around, and they used to call me Barry at work because of my uncle's name. The guy said to me, Barry, how are you? And I said, John, it's great to see you, and all this, and I went on at great length. My wife said, who in the world is that guy? Well, I said, that's John Mason, or whatever it was. Well, how do you know him? I said, he buys furniture. And in my whole life, I remembered everybody who buys furniture. But if you don't buy furniture, forget it. I don't know who you are.
Right. Have you ever had an experience that you would consider to be supernatural?
Supernatural. Only in an indirect way, but I do believe in supernatural, and I don't know if I believe in events that occur but I think there have been times where I have felt just so close to God that it's not an ordinary experience. I don't know how to explain that except that way. And that God and I are buddies, and I have a sense of his presence with me, even in disaster. Even though he's not making things right, which is usually the case. But I know he's there, and I guess it's the great comfort of knowing he's there, and it's like when you're dying with a bad liver and somebody of yours comes, it's wonderful to have him there, even though he doesn't change the event. And I think that's as close as really supernatural I would like to admit to.
Now that's a good segue for, you want to describe your religious beliefs?
Well, essentially, Christianity is but I don't even like that term because Christianity means so many things to so many people. Or born again, even worse term. I'm a company president. I worked for a company after I left, sold my interest in the other company. The president came up to me and he said, "You're one of those born again Christians." And I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say, "No, I'm not." I didn't want to say, "Yes, I am." And I don't know what I said. I just fumbled it around because it has a connotation to people that I don't care for. So what I usually say is I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. That leaves them probably just as puzzled. But I do believe the tenets of the real Christian faith, which is that God made the world and made us. I don't know that he did it in 7 days, but he did it. And that Jesus Christ was born as a baby, as we celebrated Christmas time, and he grew up, and in a way I can't understand, is truly God, and yet he's completely man too. And that's beyond, I was going to say belief. That's not true. But that's beyond logic. And but so much of spiritual faith is beyond logic. That doesn't mean it's not true. It's like human. Whoops. Well, those dogs will get into this act. Buddy, I wish you would go inside. Yeah. Where's Marge? She probably went inside and didn't realize it'd be a problem. I think that God is completely beyond our comprehension. That's my personal feeling. That we try and squeeze him down to something we can comprehend, and I think that's a big mistake because I don't think we can. His life is totally different than ours. He's just unknowable in many ways, and the only way we can know him is what he has revealed, which I think the Bible is that. It's an explanation of God and in the life of Jesus. And so if we look at Jesus, we have an idea of what God is like, and he has told us something about what God is like, and that's the only information we have. And so by faith in Jesus, I think, in his death, that we don't have to work our way out of sin. We're sinners all the time, but he's done it for us if we accept it as a gift. So that's traditional Christianity, but I don't like most religious organized groups.
What activities have you especially enjoyed as an adult?
Oh, we played tennis, we went skiing. I loved all of that. Walking in the woods, I absolutely adore, and it's something I can still do effectively. I like working around the yard and the house. And I think part of it is growing things, flowers and the lawn, and even these dogs. They're just a joy. I think dogs are, next to Marge, the best thing in the world. And I only say that because it's on tape. No, I enjoy all those things. I enjoy driving and seeing new places and exploring the unknown, much to Marge's dismay at times. I like to just wander off and poke around. Um, I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does, and actually that's a nice segue into the next one, which is what is the longest trip that you've ever gone on, and where did you go?
well, the longest trip, I mean, courtesy of the Army, I went to Germany. That's pretty far. And Marge and I last year went to Norway and Sweden, and that's 8,000 miles, which is probably the furthest I've traveled. Well, I went to Africa too, about 25 years ago, and I guess that is the furthest. Um, that had to be 12,000 miles, which is halfway around the world. And that was, in some ways, quite unusual. I went with a medical missionary, the doctor, and we went through South Africa in the days before uh, black was good vote and all that. We went to Zambia, which had recently had black rule, and we went to Zimbabwe, which was the old Rhodesia. And we had a great trip. I saw a lot of things, and I took a lot of movies, which I have.
How long were you there?
2 weeks. And because he was a missionary, he knew his way around. He knew people there, so it wasn't like you were on a tour. And we lived with missionaries generally who were pretty close to the ground, nothing fancy. And we met a lot of Africans, black Africans. And we're on a friendly basis, even in South Africa where there was a lot of racial tension. These people took us as part of the missionary effort, and they knew what these missionaries were like. And the missionaries that I was associated with were strongly for black political strength. And they weren't adamant about it. They weren't promoting anything political, but that was their basis. In fact, one of the most dramatic moments, and I guess spiritually, was in Africa, where my buddy, because of his contacts, he took us. We got into a gold mine, and we went down 8,000 feet down into the earth. Would you take this dog, please? She says, cut it. I don't know. Open the door and let us know. Yeah, just quickly, I don't want to take up the time on this, but 8,000 feet, 2 elevators we took. The borehole for the elevator had to be 100 feet in diameter. They took people down on 2 shafts, 2 cars, and they brought ore up out of the ground on 2 cars, counterbalanced. But it went down 5,000 feet in one single drop. And then you got off and ran on a little railroad that looked a bit like the subway to another hole they had bored. At 5,000 feet down, they went down another 2,500 feet down to where the vein of gold is. And the vein was 3/4 of an inch wide and laid in the earth like a piece of ham in a sandwich. It was only 3/4 of an inch wide, and it only had 1% gold in that 3/4. So they had to get a lot of rock out. It was unbelievable. But we came up out of there. I watched them pour the gold into gold bars. Guy said they had a room the size of this deck, and there were just bars all over, gold bars. So the guy said to me, "You can take as many as you want, but you have to carry it in one hand." They were 70 pounds apiece, each bar, which at an ounce, well, it was a lot of money. We went to his home. He managed the mine. Had a very lovely home. He had a little English guardhouse with a black guy in a uniform and a big pith helmet on, guarding the driveway. We went in. They had servants. It was just unbelievable. But I'm getting away from it. We went to a doctor's house. That's the one I want to tell you. Went to his house. He was a wonderful Christian man. Christian medical doctor right after this gold mine deal. We had supper there. And he said to me, and this just gives you a point of how the missionaries felt about black people and how I feel. A wonderful Christian doctor. He had us as his guests. He had about 4 or 5 children who were semi-adults, teenagers, young, early 20s. And after supper, he said, we read the scriptures after supper, and we have a time of prayer or whatever it was. And he said, Peter, one of the boys in the kitchen, a black boy, they had all service, had white gloves on and all that. He said, Peter is a Christian. And so we invite him in for the Bible reading. And so Peter promptly came out of the kitchen, and he went over and he sat on a box in the corner. And it just stunned me. It still does, 25 years later, that this man who believed in Christ and believed that God made all men, made them equal. Christ died for black people. That there he would make this 20-year-old kid go and sit on a box in the corner while we sat on big chairs around the table. It was just an unbelievable event. And I guess if I didn't go to Africa, I wouldn't have seen that or understood it or thought about it. I think that's a long enough answer.